Back on, ladies and gentlemen, Prime Minister Narendra Modi returned from his diplomatic visit to Russia and Vienna early Thursday morning. But the Russia leg of the trip seems to have irked America, the West and the NATO powers. So now they've raised concerns with Bharat about the relationship, the friendship with Russia amid Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. The West has tried to put pressure on Bharat to distance itself. But Bharat has not only resisted the pressure, but has also sent out a loud and clear message, not just of strategic autonomy, but nobody dictates terms. We choose our friends, we define our relationships, and we work in a manner which Bharat believes is going to make this world, one family with a common future. PM Modi's Moscow visit highlighting, enduring yet another evolving Bharat-Russia relationship. The PM called Russia as Bharat's companion in joy and sorrow and a true friend. They have stood with us in testing times and we stand with them. And he said, and even in the coldest of winters in Russia, the equation with Bharat will always be warm. Meanwhile, the West taking exception to that big hug, the warm hug that Prime Minister Narendra Modi gave to his old-time friend. These two are meeting personally for the 17th time in 10 years, ladies and gentlemen. And that was to try and tell the West, we are not going to cow down to your lines. We are not going to bow down to your pressure. We are going to do what we feel is right. But the Prime Minister also very clearly in front of President Putin saying that this is not the time for war and the solutions to war. Bam banduk ke beech mein samadhan nahi nikal sakta. You cannot find the solution to war in the battlefield. One needs to sit in front of each other. And he also turned around and said that he's very encouraged the positive approach towards peace, finding solidarity, finding a solution to this conflict from President Putin has given Prime Minister Narendra Modi hope. This is what he said. But look at the US reaction, especially with the Indian ambassador or the US ambassador to India, Eric Garcetti. This is what he had to say.
It's important for us as Americans and as Indians to remember the more we put into this relationship, the more we will get out. The more we insist on kind of cynical calculation in the place of trusted relationship, the less we will get. But as I also remind my Indian friends, while it is wide and it is deeper than it's ever been, it is not yet deep enough. That if we take it for granted from the Indian side towards America, I'll fight a lot of defensive battles trying to help this relationship ahead.
No, but he has to also say that should he be as aggressive as he is? Has America walked the walk and talked the talk to actually make this relationship deeper? Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar with us, Glenn Carl, former CIA officer and author with us, and Dr. Anand Ranganathan with us. Namaste. Thank you very much to everybody. Good evening. Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar, the tone adopted by Eric Garcetti, would you appreciate that as an Indian citizen, as a Bharatiya, as a diplomat?
No, I think he is stepping a line because, normally what we do in diplomacy is that as far as the diplomats are concerned, as far as the ambassador is concerned, they maintain the best of relations with their host country because they have to work with them and they have to advance the relationship. If there are some unpalatable truths that are to be said, Anand, and there are times when they have to be said in different circumstances, although I do not agree that this was one of those opportunities when, any such truth needed to be mentioned. It is normally done by the, the headquarters, by the capital back home. It is not the ambassador who sort of, starts speaking about this as to what the host country should be doing. And I think in any case, the manner in which our relationship has developed, Anand, over the last 10 years between India and the United States. And it has been mentioned that it is, Prime Minister Modi has said that this is a partnership of trust. It's a trust between the two countries. And if there is a trust between the two countries, then I think it is incumbent upon them, if there are any issues, that they discuss it amongst themselves behind closed doors rather than sort of, coming out in the open and trying to point fingers at each other. I think we have, it needs to be very clearly understood that whatever India is doing as far as its relations with Russia are concerned, with Moscow are concerned, they are definitely not against the interests of the United States. It is to take our own relationship because we have, in terms of our defense partnership that we've had with Russia and the Soviet Union before that for many, many years, and we are continue to be dependent to the extent of 45-50% of our defense requirement from Russia, our energy needs and requirements. Even the West has said that they understand and they appreciate what India has done in terms of import of discounted oil, refining it, and then supplying it to the global markets. Because if India was not doing that, then the international price of oil would have gone through the roof. So I think these are issues that are not to be discussed, that are not to be, you don't discuss your bilateral
No, but this
relations.
is not being, this is not
Just
but
last comment. Such
Ji.
important relations you don't discuss on television channels by ambassadors and try to sort them out. These are to be done behind closed doors.
No, and does America really know how to trust then? Because are you trying to say, Glenn Carl, that if nations don't walk the path that America lays out, they are not trustworthy and they are not friends?
No, well, I'm not surprised at the reaction in India, certainly by the government, and here we just heard on air against the statement by the American ambassador or the U.S. reaction to Modi's visit. But I think actually that India has grown should have grown past that, just as you all are affirming, and it's the truth, that India has become one of the four major powers, I would say, in the world, and continues to rise, soon with a larger, to surpass China in a number of ways. It also should be true that the nation can understand that there will be reactions to its national interest pursuit policies. The U.S. hasn't criticized, and in fact has worked pretty assiduously since the beginning of Russia's invasion, not to criticize India and to explicitly recognize that India will pursue its own national interests. But to give a bear hug to someone who's invaded a country and explicitly, directly, intentionally bombed a children's hospital is probably an unwise gesture to have made. And so to criticize the U.S. for reacting to that, I think shows an unnecessarily thin skin given the growing strength of India.
But then has US actually walked the talk when it has, when nations that have invaded Bharat and US continues to engage with them? It had its air bases in Pakistan and it was engaging with Pakistan for so many years. US invaded Afghanistan. So at that time, should Bharat have not shaken hands with Afghanistan? And that time it's a fight against terror. The US is the one, the CIA is the one that trained Osama bin Laden in the first place. Now that's an open secret. The US invaded Iraq. US invaded Iraq on the premise of weapons of mass destruction, and then 15 years later said there are no weapons of mass destruction. So should India not shake hands, should India have not shaken hands or given a hug to Barack Obama or President Biden or even before that other leaders? So, can one narrative, I'm just asking you, Glenn, can one nation's narrative supersede the other nation's position? That's what I'm asking you.
No, you put a lot of ingredients into the soup there. Certainly the U.S. has done an uncountable number of things in foreign policy and military actions that one can fairly criticize, that were predicted that would be errors, were found out to be errors, and are widely viewed as such. But that has nothing to do with whether one should criticize or comment upon the action of any state. And in this instance, India, I think, Modi made an error by giving a bear hug to someone who had just bombed a children's hospital. That's not a comment on whether India should or will pursue its national interests, or should, which it won't, align with the United States as a subordinate state. That's simply not going to happen. But to react to the point where criticism of an action is considered hostility is too thin-skinned.
Ambassador Sajanar, how do you want to respond? Because there is a counterpoint of view that says that had that bear hug not happened, had that warmth not been there, Prime Minister Narendra Modi would not have been able to sit in front of President Putin and tell him that solutions to war cannot be found in the battlefield. And he would have not been able to sit there and openly say that it pains when innocent children die.
No, you see, I think there is a particular manner, a particular body language that an individual has. And we are aware of the body language and the rapport that the Prime Minister has with world leaders. You know, when he meets President Joe Biden, he also has the same hug for him. Also with President Macron and, the other leaders of friendly countries. Now, if you are visiting another country, and you say that, I'm going to sort of, stand aloof and, do a namaste or something and not have, a close bear hug in terms of, reacting and responding to each other. I think that would have sent a very different sort of a message. I don't think there should be anything all that much that should be read into this bear hug. This is a way that, the Prime Minister has been over the last 10 years, and people should really understand that, should know that this is the way he relates to world leaders who are friendly to India and friendly to him, with whom he has a good rapport. So I don't think there should be all that much read into it. Like Glenn Carl is saying that he should not have done that. I would say, please don't read so much into it. And if you have any point to make, please make it behind closed doors. Why do you have to come out in the open and castigate and be critical?
That's because President Zelensky went public with it. President Zelensky was the first one to respond, and I think that's where
Anand,
the entire...
I say that Prime Minister Modi gave a similar bear hug to President Zelensky also. So, it is not that it is...
at that time, Russia did not come around and say, how can you hug Zelensky? Yeah. So there is a point.
I find that a little... I find that...
no, but when it comes to deepening the trust, Dr. Ranganathan, do you believe it's a little rich coming from Eric Garcetti, especially when the Five Eyes have been set upon to try and hurt Bharat's image, especially when U.S. refuses to cooperate in trying to, extradite a wanted and a designated terrorist in Gurpatwant Panun? The Khalistani elements are being celebrated at the House of Commons, and the U.S. did not say anything. A terrorist, a wanted person was celebrated there in the, beg your pardon, Canadian House of Commons.
Look, the hypocrisy is just astonishing. So people are objecting to a bear hug. Is that not relative? I object to a handshake. Did Biden not shake hands with the Pakistan Prime Minister? Pakistan is a terror state as far as we are concerned. Did we, raise this with the Americans? Has the West or Ukraine or any of the 50-odd Islamic nations put sanctions on China for interning 1.5 million Muslims in concentration camps and forcibly sterilizing them and feeding them pork? Even as late as this beginning of this year, U.S. EIA reports that back in October, U.S. continues to import Russian oil, as many as 40,000 barrels, almost 2 years into the Ukraine war. They are still importing Russian oil. Looking forward to Europe, for example, 2 years into the Russian invasion, continues to buy 13 million metric tons of coal, 43 billion cubic meters of gas, and 17.5 million metric tons of oil from Russia. And they are lecturing India on morality and ethics. Germany is buying Russian fuel from Belgium and Holland. Europe is buying refined Russian fuel from Jamnagar. Americans were importing 9% of their crude from Russia well beyond the Ukraine war. What the hell is going on? So please, enough of your hypocrisy. We are doing something that is important for our national interest, period.
But in this case, they are saying, did he really have to hug Vladimir Putin?
Well, I object to a handshake. Why did Biden have to shake hands with a terror nation apologist?
Glenn Carl?
Well, I think we have almost a Hollywood or Bollywood example of what worsens the situation by an exaggerated reaction. The issue is, we crystallized the discussion around the hug, but of course the issue really isn't the hug. It's India's choices on its how to pursue its national interests. And I'll reiterate that I think it's pretty clear that the United States has gone a long way, quite explicitly attempted to indicate that it understands India will pursue its national interests. The issue isn't that the U.S. somehow, got somebody in the United States, this is news to me, bought 40,000 barrels of oil. The issue on the oil question, and we've thrown a lot of things together, which always creates confusion and dispute, is what are the trends? And Europe made a strategic error decades ago to marry itself for energy to Russia. But it is trying to wean itself and has done significant things to do that since Russia invaded Ukraine, while India has found a good deal and managed to get below what otherwise would be world market prices, well over 10 times more oil since the war, imports since the war began, than before. That's all.
Right, but in this case, it's just that if you want to deepen the trust between two nations, then you cannot use, certain tools to try and keep that nation on tenterhooks and to try and use that while trying to get the nation to behave in the manner and in the trend or in the that like you would do. You have to respect that nation's choice. That also applies on the US. So if Bharat wants to exert a strategic autonomy, US cannot take exception to that and saying, no, you cannot do it in this manner. You cannot do it in that manner. That means then the US is trying to drive its terms. Gentlemen, I've run out of time, so we'll take this conversation forward. We're waiting for an official reaction from the External Affairs Ministry. So far, there's been none. We'll keep close tabs on that. Winding up this edition of The Right Stand on that note. Brass Tacks with Zakir Jacob up next. Stay with us.
How there'll be several leaders who would be supporting, would be looking to jump back to the original UBT, that is the UBT faction. And similarly, there have been murmurs about how there are several